Hello fellow TV and film fanatics, I'm Greg and I make recommendations for TV shows and movies that you can check out from the comfort of your own home. And today's list certainly takes a walk down a little bit of a darker path with intense shows packed with chilling mysteries, fractured minds, and psychological thrills. But as always, stop mindlessly scrolling, stop wasting your time, let's just jump in and check it out.
Honestly, you're lucky to have me. Every relationship has its obstacles to overcome, right?
First up on our list here today is the Netflix original series You, and at the center of all this is Joe Goldberg, who is a charming bookstore manager with a dangerous hobby, which is stalking, and not in the casual Instagram scrolling kind of way, but a full-on surveillance, hacking, and occasional murder type of way. And this is a 4-season series with a 5th hitting next month, and season 1, it introduces you to Joe's world with his unique set of skills that he has, and then in later seasons, we see him pick up new identities, move to Los Angeles, try out a normalish life even. And honestly, going into this one, I was convinced that I was not going to enjoy this at all, but Penn Badgley's performance almost instantly changed my mind. He's honestly hypnotic in this. He does have a very Dexter-like charm in this show. At times he's very awkward, and then other times he's extremely intelligent or very charming. And if that's not Dexter enough for you, you even get this same interesting inner monologue that he had, that it's both terrifying and relatable at times in the show. And it may sound weird, but you at times catch yourself wondering if you're actually rooting for this terrible person. And I will be clear, I did think that the plot for seasons 1 and 2 were outstanding. It had tons of wild twists that keep you hooked, and even though the story can be a bit outlandish, it's still incredible to watch. Then season 3 I thought was okay. It did get a little bit of a repetitive cycle for me. Joe's getting obsessed, he's stalking, and then, well, doing worse things than that, which can be a bit predictable. And then season 4 was a bit of a soft reset, and I have a hard time recommending season 4. I didn't love it as much as the other 3, but I'm very hopeful that season 5 will go back to what made it so intriguing to start with. And with almost all the shows on the list today, I do want to give a customary warning to them, and this one walks a very thin line between critiquing obsession and glorifying it at times, so it's something to keep in mind going in. But the numbers in this one don't lie. You was a huge success on Netflix, pulling in solid ratings thanks to its dark satirical tone and its use of Joe's inner monologue to drag you into this twisted world.
You think you have succeeded. Until now.
Next up is another series filled with lies, and this is one of Apple TV Plus's newest shows, and this is Disclaimer. This series follows Catherine Ravencroft, who's played by Cate Blanchett in this series. She's a respected journalist whose life gets thrown into chaos when she finds this mysterious novel on her bedside table. But this isn't just any book. This novel actually mirrors a dark and buried secret from Catherine's past with this eerie accuracy. And as Catherine turns the pages, she's forced to confront memories she's long repressed, while also confronting those in her life that she left in the dark, while getting dragged into this psychological game of cat and mouse. And like most of the shows on this list, Disclaimer explores some heavy themes. You've got trauma, ethical boundaries, and just how quickly a well-kept secret can unravel someone's life. This series is directed by Alfonso Cuarón, who's known for visually stunning films like Gravity, and he brings the same beautiful cinematography to this series that is as haunting as it is alluring in this one, and the cinematography alone in this one is worth the watch, creating this very intriguing atmosphere that honestly makes you question everything that you're seeing. And the performances in this one were also a huge asset to the show. Cate Blanchett, as always, is phenomenal. She brings so much depth and vulnerability to the character Catherine that even as the story gets darker, you're hooked on everything that she's doing. Plus, then you get Kevin Kline, who is unsettling in the very best of ways. He's this calm, collected, and really unhinged character, plus a host of supporting characters from Sacha Baron Cohen, Layla George, and Cody Smith-McPhee. Really, the acting prowess in this one is off the chart. One thing that really did stand out to me too is I did really enjoy the non-linear storytelling and then the blurred memories in this one. At times they were so frustrating, but also at the same time they were actually outstanding. It was very hard to identify what is real and what's completely made up throughout the series, really keeping you on your toes as you figure things out and this mystery unveils itself. So if you're a fan of psychological thrillers that may get under your skin a little bit and keeps you guessing until the very end, this is a perfect option.
You had no interaction with him before today.
I've never met him before in my life.
Then why kill him?
My next pick is another series that you can currently find on Netflix, and this is The Sinner. And this one here is an anthology series with one constant at the core of each season, and this is Detective Harry Ambrose, played by Bill Pullman, who basically is the definition of a troubled but brilliant investigator. He isn't just solving crimes in the series, he's actually peeling layers back of this trauma, repressed memories, and the darkest corners of the human psyche to understand what drives people to commit the violent acts in the show. And this one here masterfully blends the psychological horror in it with moral ambiguity and unsettling revelations, keeping you guessing with each season whether Harry is investigating a young mother's unexplained rage on a beach, an 11-year-old's linked to a cult, a fatal car crash. There are compelling mysteries in every single season. And over all the seasons, you do have outstanding cast members with names like Jessica Biel, Alice Kremmelberg, Matt Bomer, and Carrie Coon, but with Pullman being the one constant here, the show really revolves around him and his character, and that is certainly a positive. He is phenomenal as Harry Ambrose. Throughout the series, he's a bit unpredictable at times and dealing with so much on his own, but Pullman brings this incredible intensity to the role as well as this very intriguing internal turmoil that makes even the darkest scenes compelling to watch. And all the shows on today's list have psychological depth, but this series really explores the trauma and guilt that can drive people to do these unimaginable things, and the smart writing really brings it to life and keeps you locked in and really questioning everything that's going on. And then they amplify the entire show by creating this unsettling atmosphere as they dive deep into these broken characters. So if you're in the mood for something dark and digs deep into what makes people snap, The Sinner is definitely worth adding to your watch list.
Never gonna get him, are we? It's like he's on a crusade.
Go.
These kids are in so much pain.
Is it me you're trying to save, or you're...
So let's move forward and talk about another dark and atmospheric crime drama here that's all about the slow burn, and this is The Killing on Netflix as well. This series kicks off with the murder of Rosie Larson, who is a teenage girl in Seattle, and the series itself follows Detective Sarah Linden and Stephen Holder as they untangle this complex web of secrets around this person's death. And this isn't your typical procedural show. The Killing takes a more realistic approach to how things are done, mirroring the exhausting and often disheartening grind of a real-life investigation. And I will actually mention this, outside of the plot, the show itself actually has this really interesting journey. It was canceled not once, but twice by AMC before Netflix swooped in and gave it a final season, really allowing the story to wrap up properly. And that's not taking away from the actual plot itself. It does a great job balancing these murder investigations with the emotional fallout of all the characters that have to deal with this. Plus you get political ambitions of local officials, plus the personal demons haunting both these detectives. And each season explores a new layer of Seattle's underbelly, from crime to corruption to the broken criminal justice system, making it feel like a classic gritty noir film set in modern times. Another one where the leads are a huge draw here for me. I really enjoyed Muriel Enos' performance here, but I do love Joel Kinnaman. He brings a quiet intensity to this role and makes every scene feel like it's on the verge of unraveling. His unique personality and troubled past creates a perfect counterbalance to Linden's obsessive drive, and their chemistry also is fantastic, and the way that their partnership evolves season to season is one of the more compelling aspects of the series overall. And lastly for me, the slow burn pacing built suspense. It allowed for a lot of deep character moments and development, which I really liked and helped you get invested, but I realized slow burns are not for everyone, so that's just a heads up there. If you like dark, gritty crime dramas with heavy psychological edges, you could do way worse than The Killing. Alright, next up is The Outsider on HBO Max, which is a dark and unsettling psychological series based on the Stephen King novel of the same name. And if you're into shows that blur lines between reality and supernatural while exploring dark corners of the human mind, this one should definitely be on your watch list. This one kicks off with Detective Ralph Anderson, who's investigating the brutal murder of a young boy in a small town. And it seems like a pretty straightforward case, as all the evidence points directly at Terry Maitland, who is a beloved Little League coach. But here's the twist. There is also ironclad evidence that he is miles away when the murder actually happened. And as the investigation progresses, what starts as this straightforward case spirals into a nightmare filled with supernatural elements, leaving this detective to question everything he thought he knew. I love genre mashups, and this show balances elements of crime drama, mystery, supernatural, horror, all really well. The gradual shift from grounded crime drama to full-on horror was brilliant, making the supernatural elements feel more shocking and even unsettling at times. It also has this incredible atmosphere filled with this constant sense of dread, and again, one that uses a slow burn approach to build all kinds of tension and suspense without giving away too much too soon. It's dark, it's eerie, and it keeps you guessing about what actually happened, but also what is real and what's not. I'll highlight the cast here: Ben Mendelsohn, Jason Bateman, Patty Considine, Cynthia Erivo, and plenty of others that make every second count, delivering outstanding performances that are both sympathetic, psychotic, and even tragic. Then lastly, I'll say visually, this show has, out of all the shows on our list today, one of the more sinister atmospheres. The cinematography and the sound design work together really well to turn this fairly mundane setting into something very chilling and eerie. You have the shadowy forest, the gloomy lighting, the sound of footsteps echoing in empty hallways. It all adds to the feeling that something terrifying is always lurking just out of sight. So if you're a fan of psychological thrillers that combine true crime and supernatural, The Outsider is a perfect option.
You look the same. I'm not.
I have sworn that I will do very foolish things.
What things?
Who exactly is it that wants you dead?
Let's move forward and talk about our first series you can find on Hulu, and this is Taboo. This one is set in 1814 London and follows James Delaney, who returns from Africa after being presumed dead to claim his father's estate. And his comeback throws a wrench into the plans of the East India Trading Company, and what unfolds is this twisted battle of wills as Delaney faces off against powerful enemies, all while being haunted by his past and driven by a thirst for revenge. And I've got to start here because Tom Hardy is the heart and soul of this series. His portrayal of James Delaney is outstanding. It's a bit chaotic, it's also intense, it's downright menacing at times, and this complete mystery, because one minute he's this grieving son, and then the next second he's ripping people's throats out and dealing with dark magic. And I thought Hardy played it so well. He keeps you guessing about Delaney's true motives all the time, making him extremely complex and this intriguing anti-hero. I do definitely think that the production team deserves a shout out for this one too. The cinematography, again, it's top notch in this series, highlighting grimy docks, fog covered streets, and these candlelit mansions, making this world feel both beautiful and horrifying all at the same time. And they blend all this together with this historical drama that dives deep into the dark side of 19th century London, creating this compelling world filled with back alley deals, opium dens, and conspiracies that go literally all the way to the top. And if that's not enough, then there's the plot itself that I'm not sure Twisted even really covers it. His fight isn't just against the East India Trading Company, he's also facing off against the British Crown, spies, and a whole lineup of people who'd like to see him dead. And if that's not enough for you, he's also haunted by hallucinations and visions that blur the lines again between reality and madness. So for my fellow Peaky Blinders fans, if you're looking for something that may feel similar, this is an amazing addition to your watch list. The next title on our list here is a bit different than the rest here today, but has tons of psychological thrills, and this is Alice in Borderland. This is a Japanese sci-fi thriller series available on Netflix based on the manga of the same name. And in this series, we follow a group trapped in a deserted alternate version of Tokyo known as the Borderlands. And this is a lethal playground where they're forced to compete in a series of deadly games to survive. And these games are brutal, testing everything from intelligence to teamwork to sheer physical endurance. And I was 100% bought in on this one right from the get-go because of the setup. And this one might sound weird, and you might think it seems a little out of place on this list here, about to skip this chapter, but please give me a second, because yes, it is different, but it does an outstanding job balancing this uniqueness with some intense action and the deep psychological tension you are here for. Each game is a brutal mind game in its own right, designed to push these characters to their absolute limits. And it's not just about surviving the physical threats either, it's about dealing with the guilt, paranoia, and the moral compromises that come with every choice that they make. The stakes are always high, and the show has a very interesting way of making you feel that tension every step of the way. And if you follow my channel, you know that I love world building, and this one here does have it in droves. You explore the deserted streets of Tokyo, and the production team nails the visual effects combined with the practical sets, making the Borderlands feel both real and terrifying. And it's a world where you never know what's coming next. The sense of unpredictability is a big part of what makes this show so addictive, and then combine that with the eerie silence and sudden bursts of violence, making every moment feel dangerous. The only thing I will mention is that this one does get a bit convoluted, especially in its later episodes. The mix of the sci-fi, the psychological thriller, and the survival horror can be a bit chaotic at times, but it's totally worth paying attention to for all the reveals. So if you're looking for something that is totally different than the others on the list, this one here is brutal, mind-bending, and filled with twists. Definitely worth checking out.
Die Frage ist nicht, wer die Kinder entführt hat, sondern wann.
Up next is by far my favorite title on today's list here, and this is the Netflix original series Dark. This is another sci-fi psychological thriller here, and this one kicks off in a small town of Winden, where the disappearances of 2 children exposes a complex web of secrets that spans multiple generations. As 4 families struggle to uncover the truth, they realize they're caught in a loop of time travel and conspiracy that threatens to unravel everything. And I'll start off by saying that I love time travel, and this show handles time travel in one of the most complicated and well put together ways I've ever seen. Literally everything in this show has a distinct purpose. The show does not just jump between different time periods. It creates a tightly woven narrative where every action has a consequence that ripples across decades. Along with these very subtle visual cues and symbols to tie everything together, the production team deserves a ton of credit here. It put a ton of effort into making sure that every detail has a purpose, from colors of the characters' clothes to the reoccurring motifs and infinity symbols that pop up everywhere. And again, this one has one of the most tightly wrapped up narratives around time travel that I've ever seen. And as you slowly understand the secrets of this story, the lines between heroes and villains blur, making you question the motives of everybody. It's another series that demands your full attention though. And even then, you might need a notebook to keep track of all the different connections. This isn't a series that you can just casually watch, in my opinion. You really don't get the full effect if you're scrolling on your phone, and the plot is way too complex. Think like Westworld season 1, but times 10 almost. Between the multiple timelines, the doppelgangers, the endless twists, it's easy to get lost if you're not fully focused on it. And they top all that off with something very familiar to today's list. It has an oppressive, eerie atmosphere, shadow-filled forests, rain-soaked streets in the background, and then the sound design playing a huge role, blending the haunting tracks in here that really builds up this world and the tension within it. So if you're like me and you don't speak German, throw on the English dub of this because Dark is a must watch. Just make sure that you're paying attention because this one does not hold your hand at all.
What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me?
It's hard to follow up Dark here on this list, but let's move forward and let's talk about the series Bates Motel. And this one serves as the contemporary prequel to Alfred Hitchcock's iconic film Psycho. This one here does start with Norma and Norman relocating to a coastal town to run a small motel after the sudden death of Norman's father. And what begins as an attempt to start fresh quickly spirals into a dark exploration of mental illness, obsession, and the blurred lines between love and control. And as secrets start to pile up and bodies start to drop, we see how far they are willing to go to escape the truth about Norman. If you enjoy chilling, eerie atmospheres and psychological tension, this one's going to deliver for you. This is another production team that went to great lengths to create a sense of isolation and claustrophobia, using those shadow-filled rooms, the ominous forest that seem to be in all these shows, with every detail from the color palettes to the music, adding to the feeling that something terrible is always about to happen in this one. They do an incredible job in this one, building up the characters in very interesting ways, making sure that you're very invested in their lives before things do go really dark. And trust me, they do go really dark in this series. And as you see Norman's descent into madness bit by bit, this is another solid option on the list here. This one dives deep into the mind of this iconic character. And if you can handle the dark themes and this slow burning pace that comes along with it, Bates Motel is definitely worth checking out.
I wondered if we could have a quick chat.
You're not a cop.
I was. Royal Military Police. I'm a private investigator now.
Up next is the title CB Strike here, and this is a British crime drama series available on HBO Max based on the Corman Strike novels by Robert Galbraith, which is aka J.K. Rowling's here, but it follows Corman Strike, played by Tom Burke in this series, who is a war veteran turned private investigator, and now his assistant Robin, played by Holliday Granger, as they tackle a series of complex and often unsettling cases across London. And I really like the plot of this series here, and I think it's another fairly complicated one, but what really kept me watching this one was actually the chemistry between Tom Burke and Holliday Granger. I actually only watched this recently because I loved Holliday in the Capture series, but Their dynamic is so much fun to see evolve throughout the series, blending this professional respect with a simmering tension that makes every scene between them very compelling to watch. Tom Burke puts on this very rough exterior in this show, and he's dealing with his own trauma from the military service that plays a huge role in how he approaches the cases, and the show doesn't shy away from exploring his flaws and vulnerabilities here, and that keeps you rooting for him. Meanwhile, Holliday Grainger is again great in this series. I think she's very sharp as Robin, determined, bringing her own emotional baggage to the table, and she ends up being way more than just a sidekick throughout. And a lot like Pullman in The Sinner, this is not just about catching the bad guys here. I mean, they do catch the bad guys in this series, but this is more about unraveling the why behind the crimes, diving into the twisted minds of both the perpetrators and the victims of the crimes. And if you enjoy something that's a bit grittier like that doesn't shy away from the details and explores heavy themes and even some violence, this is a solid option.
We're not bad people. But we did a bad thing.
The next pick on our list here today is definitely one that I have to give credit to my dad for, because he got me into this series, and it's another one on Netflix. This is Bloodline. And this one is set in the beautiful yet isolating Florida Keys, and this series centers around the Rayburn family, who run this picturesque beachfront hotel. And on the surface, they're the kind of successful, respectful family that you'd probably envy, but underneath lies this web of dark secrets, some betrayal, and even guilt just waiting to unravel. And things really pick up and hit the fan when Danny, the troubled and estranged son, returns home for his parents' 45th anniversary, and he threatens to expose everything this family has tried so hard to bury. And from that moment on, things just spiral out of control. And I really got hooked on this one in the early part of this series. It has some awesome mysteries where you slowly find out what the Rayburns did, but they keep that going as you find out why they did it as well. And I do feel like this is a pretty common theme on today's list here, but this is another one that takes its time to build things up. So if you're looking for fast-paced action or constant plot twists, this is probably not going to be the one for you. This series takes its time building up the suspense, focusing heavily on the character development and the psychological toll of keeping these dark secrets. And that turns what could have been this very straightforward family drama into something that's very dark and very twisted. And the writers, they keep things super interesting and at times very frustrating through a mix of flashbacks. They have some unreliable narrators and these shifting perspectives to keep you guessing about who can actually be trusted. And not to continue to sound like a broken record, but one of the strongest aspects of Bloodline, again, is its cast, especially Ben Mendelsohn here. He is a perfect mix of menacing and emotional that keeps you hooked, and it really makes it hard to decide if he's the victim, a villain, or just a little bit of both throughout. And the only thing that I want to say before you commit to this one is that this series is outstanding, but the ending of it is not the best. But if you can live with that, the entire show overall is well worth checking out.
Welcome to Tranquillum House. You want to get well? You want to heal? Surrender yourself to me.
All right, next up here is 9 Perfect Strangers, which is a miniseries that again you can find on Hulu based on Liam Moriarty's novel. And this one follows 9 city dwellers seeking to escape their successful lives at a wellness resort run by this enigmatic character, Masha. And on the surface, this resort promises transformation and healing. But as the guests dig deeper, they do start to question this guru's unconventional methods and the real purpose of their stay here. And what starts as this spiritual retreat quickly morphs into this tense psychological game where the lines between therapy and manipulation blur dangerously. Let's get this out of the way early. This one has a great and stacked cast. Nicole Kidman as the lead here, but a long list of quality actors here. Melissa McCarthy, Michael Shannon, Luke Evans, Regina Hall, Bobby Cannavale, and a ton of other familiar names that make up these interesting and hyperbolized characters. And that is great because we do get some quality performances here, but for me, what makes 9 Perfect Strangers really stand out is how it blends all the elements together. It has obviously the psychological thrills that you're here for, but it's got drama, it's got a little humor in it, even some satire that pokes at this wellness culture and the danger of placing blind faith in people who claim to have all the answers. And then there's these mysteries the whole time where you're left questioning Masha's true motives and how far she's willing to go to, air quote, transform her guests. Also, I thought it was a very interesting setting for this type of show. The resort itself is very beautiful, but It's also isolated with these pristine surroundings that are supposed to be soothing, but really it only adds to the eerie sense that something just isn't right. And this atmosphere is jammed full of suspense and the kind of artificial calm that just makes you feel like something is being hidden from the characters. And the show uses this a ton to create this sense of growing paranoia from episode to episode, and this distrust is actually one of the biggest drivers for the narrative itself. Lastly, I actually really enjoyed how the show leaned a little bit into the surreal world with some almost fantastical territories, and I'll admit it did cause the plot to get a little bit out there at times, and I never thought it went too far, but as long as you're okay with things getting a little weird or a lot dark, this is a solid watch.
Greetings, Detective. Did you catch all the bad guys?
I believe I've been contacted by the Mercedes killer.
I'm really excited to recommend this next title here because every video that I've wanted to recommend this on before, they've taken it off of streaming. So go watch this one quickly because you never know when they'll take it off again. But this is Mr. Mercedes. And this series here is based off of the Bill Hodges trilogy by Stephen King and centers around retired detective Bill Hodge, who just can't shake one haunting case. And years after this unsolved crime, the killer starts taunting Hodges with disturbing messages, and this drags this retired detective back into the investigation, setting the stage for a psychological cat and mouse game between the two deeply damaged but dangerously clever minds. And on the surface of this one, again, it's about stopping a killer, but at its core, this one really is this psychological warfare between these two characters who are both obsessed, but for very different reasons. And this one is dark, it's unsettling, and it's got that slow burn suspense that Stephen King is known for. And again, I'm going to get it out of the way. The leads are great. Brendan Gleeson as Bill Hodges is intense. He's layered. You really feel the weight of this guy's regret and his desperation to make things right. And then on the flip side here, you have Harry Treadaway, who is generally chilling and makes you want to look away, but honestly, it's hard to when he's on screen. And then there are the scenes where they're together, which crank up the tension to 11, and they honestly keep you guessing on who's going to outsmart who throughout the entirety of the series. And this is another one where I want to give a shout out to the production team who knocks it out of the park with this one, with the creepy and suspenseful atmosphere. Whether it's the eerie quiet of Hodges' lonely home or the dark corners of the world, this is another one where the show makes the most out of these ordinary settings that make them just feel sinister. But if you're in the mood for some mind games, Mr. Mercedes is definitely worth a spot on your watch list.
Pinch myself and say, I am awake. Look at my hands, count my fingers, stay calm.
Let's talk about one more Netflix original here on our list today, and this is the series Behind Her Eyes. And this show follows Louise, who is a single mother who gets a lot more than she bargained for when she begins an affair with her new boss, David. And things get way messier when she ends up becoming very close friends with his wife, Adele. And as Louise gets pulled deeper into their tangled web of secrets and lies, she starts to uncover some dark truths, and that's really when things get twisted. The show itself is packed full of everything you would expect from a psychological thriller, including manipulation, mind games, and even some surprises throughout. And this is another one that's a little bit different than the bulk of the list today. If you didn't guess it yet, it obviously has some forbidden romance, but it also includes some interesting supernatural mysteries, which sounds like a lot, but it somehow all works together and keeps you guessing, slowly feeding you information about everything that's going on with some seriously shocking twists throughout. And without giving away too much, this one does get pretty weird beyond the typical twists and turns of these types of shows that at times feels a bit out of left field, and I know that I certainly wasn't expecting them. And if you enjoy these types of shows or this genre, you are going to get a very familiar cinematography and setting that adds to the creepiness of the show, whether it's gloomy backdrops, eerie dream sequences. The constant sense that something's very, very off is certainly part of what makes the series addicting. And I did like the cast in this one, but I'm not sure I would say that they were a huge draw for me. Simona Brown does a fantastic job, and I did really enjoy Eva Hewson, but I think that their performance were more of just a guide through this wild story that we go on that takes some crazy turns. And again, trust me, this show goes places that you will not see coming. So if you're okay suspending some of your beliefs and enjoy a wild ride, this might be a great pick for you.
I'm right. Danny may be innocent.
What are you not telling me? What are you not telling yourself?
Then last but not least on our list today is the Apple TV Plus miniseries, The Crowded Room. And this one is inspired by the novel The Minds of Billy Milligan by Daniel Keyes. And the series itself follows Danny, who is a young man arrested for a shooting in 1979 in New York City. And We see Danny's story unfold through a series of interviews with interrogator Raya Goodwin, who dives deep into his troubled past, revealing this potential struggle in Danny's fractured mind. This series does get quite crazy in all of the right ways, to be honest with you, and I think it's even crazier knowing it's based on true events, and you are going to get a lot of the same elements as the others on the list here today. It's part crime drama, explores dark themes, along with the dark corners of the human mind, and I do have to continue to be a broken record here because The Crowded Room actually has one of the best casts on our list here. First, you do have Tom Holland, who is obviously more well known for his roles in more lighthearted or action-packed films, so seeing him take a hard left turn here was pretty incredible, and it really delivers a portrayal that's both dark and unsettling, and the way that he switches between this sad, broken man in the show and something much more menacing is actually really impressive. And then you get Amanda Seyfried, who I've talked about in a few other videos recently. I think she's incredible, and she's as impressive as ever in this one, and they do have an incredible dynamic that keeps the tension high, and the star power really doesn't stop with them here either. You also have Emmy Rossum, Sasha Lane, Jason Isaacs, and a few others that really elevate the quality of this show. And then lastly, what I would say is the cinematography for me does do a lot of the heavy lifting in this one. I really enjoyed it. I liked how they used this claustrophobic interiors to mirror Danny's fragmented state of mind, and that helps build up this incredible mystery throughout the series, piecing together Danny's past and the events leading up to this shooting. So if you're in the mood for something with some standout performances, The Crowded Room is absolutely one to check out. So thanks again for hanging out with us all the way to the end of the video. I really appreciate it. And if you're looking for more recommendations, you can check out these videos down below, but also take a second to like, subscribe, comment, hit all the buttons on the screen. It does really help us get our recommendations out to others looking for great shows that they can check out from home. But thanks again, and we'll see you in the next one.